Well, that's our next conversation, really. But just to let you know that in case you are not aware, there are certain elections going on today. Just so you know, supplementary.
I'm sure some people are going to say, INEC again. INEC again.
You know, so Kebbi, Adamawa, Rivers, I think a number of other states are having supplementary elections today. So just so you know. And by the way, if you need to follow up on exactly the things that are going on, please go to Channels TV. At Channels TV on Twitter, you have blow-by-blow account of how these things are going in various parts of Nigeria, including Oyo State, you know, close to us here.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
The House of Rep polls will be held in a total of 31 constituencies across 15 states: Akwa Ibom, Anambra, Bayelsa, Ebonyi, Edo, Imo, Jigawa, Kano, Kebbi, Kogi, Oyo, Rivers, Sokoto, Taraba, and Zamfara. That's a lot of states.
That is a lot of states. That definitely is a lot of states.
Whoa. Anyway, all that is going on, but because we're all not really involved, many of us are not even aware. But well, INEC is still at work.
Yeah, just so you know.
Yes. So, it's been 9 years since about 276 girls were spirited into the night from their dormitories in a place called Chibok in Nigeria. 96 of them remain in captivity. And since then, thousands more children have been subjected to grave violations of their rights. But like somebody will say, who told girls that they had rights anyway? UNICEF says it welcomes the government of Nigeria's signing of the UNICEF-supported handover protocol and its commitment to invest 144.8 billion naira towards the Safe Schools financing plan in 2022 and stands ready to support the government in its implementation to ensure that all children encountered in the course of armed conflict in Nigeria or released from armed groups are quickly reunited with their families and benefit from reintegration programs. Thank you very much, UNICEF. We have with us this morning to receive the thanks and also tell us more about what is going on. We have Mr. Samuel Sise, UNICEF Child Protection Manager, Maiduguri, Officer in Charge, UNICEF Maiduguri. Good morning, Mr. Sise.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We understand that 96 of those girls who were spirited away in the night are still in captivity. And because of that, many parents of the girl child have refused to send their girl children to school in some parts of northern Nigeria. Is there anything UNICEF is doing towards alleviating their fears and letting them know that it's okay for the girl child to go to school?
I'm sorry, there was a hitch. Can you just repeat the question?
Okay. I said that the Chibok incident led to many parents deciding that their girl child would not go to school. Is there anything that UNICEF is doing? You are in Maiduguri, in the thick of it. Is there anything that UNICEF is doing to alleviate the fears of these parents, to make them understand that it's okay for the girl child to go to school and the danger is not as bad as it would seem?
Definitely. Wherever UNICEF works, UNICEF supports the efforts of the government in making sure that the rights of children are protected, including girls. It is the rights of children to go to school and that of girls as well. We all are aware what happened 9 years ago, but UNICEF has been working with the government, as you rightly put it, in the Safe School Declaration, trying to make sure that efforts are being made to protect environments where children go to get education. These efforts have been made at federal level and at state level. Investments have been made in terms of protecting structures, physical structures where children go to school. Investments have been made in trying to make sure that the government put in more money, protecting environments where children go to school. Investments have been made in supporting teachers, making sure that they are aware how to protect children in school. Investments have been made in terms of also working with communities to raise awareness so that wherever children are in school, they should be protected.
Tell us about the Safe School Initiative.
Yes, so basically, Nigeria signed this declaration a few years ago.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Go ahead. We can hear you, Mr. Cisse.
Oh dear. Well, most certainly we need to get that fixed because we don't
Mr.
know why
Cisse?
he's unable to hear us. Can you hear us now?
Sorry, there was another itch, but I'm back.
Okay. Just keep going.
Yes. So in terms of the Safe School Declaration, like I said, Nigeria signed this initiative a few years ago, and the government has shown commitment in terms of supporting the effort. One, the Safe School Declaration ensures that wherever children go to school, it is protected and children can access learning from that location. So like I was saying, the investments are being made in protecting the environments where children go to school, the physical structure and other things. Then in situations where it is very risky for children to go to school, like you are saying, we are in Maiduguri in the northeast, there are a lot of challenges in some communities. Children are moved from those insecure locations and moved to secure locations where they can continue to go to school. Those that have been displaced and sent to IDP camps, they are being provided with support in those camps, and communities are being supported to raise awareness in terms of what kind of support to give, and of course in terms of also providing support even to the teachers to make sure that if there is an attack, what should be done to protect children. So those are just part of the declaration.
You are in Maiduguri yourself, and it's been 9 years. Has there been any change in the attitude of parents towards letting their children go to school? Initially, we understand perfectly that they would be quite apprehensive, but it's been 9 years. So are they beginning to allow their children go back to school now?
Definitely. Like I said, it is part of UNICEF efforts to raise awareness of those communities and to give them back reassured hope with the Ministry of Education. UNICEF support the effort of the Ministry of Education to make sure that wherever these children are allowed to go to school, they are safe. Can it be in terms of physical protection? Can it be in terms of providing security along those locations? Like I also told you in IDP camps when we had them, children also were provided support. And so, there has been a difference now. Parents are having confidence. Children are going to school, including girls.
Can you give us an idea of how many children have been abducted in Nigeria in the last, since Chibok?
That's interesting. We do what we call the monitoring and reporting mechanism, wherein we monitor abductions, be they related to the conflict, or you have others that are not related to the conflict. But when you come to those that are related to the conflict, you have thousands of children that have been abducted in different locations. But that's why, as you have seen, what UNICEF is doing, when these children are released, our effort is to make sure that first we trace their families, then provide them reintegration support in their communities of return. So if you see that a lot of children that we abducted, that we are released, also now the mass exit that is happening here in the Northeast, we have 3 camps where they are. We are now waiting to return these children back to their families. So abduction is one of the strategy that the armed groups are using, to make children join them. They need strength, they need support, they need children to be able to do all of these things for them. So that's why they target children wherever they attack in those communities.
Well, very interesting that you put it that way, Mr. Sese, because, I mean, there was some conversation we heard in the early years of this whole abduction, saga, was that it's more difficult to fight a philosophical war such as is being pursued when they said Boko Haram, which means education is sin and all of that. So in what way would you say over the past 9 years or so we've been able to degrade that philosophy? In what would you say we have been able to do anything as a state, as a country, or even at the various subnational levels? Would you say we've been able to degrade that philosophy of impoverishing education and actually enriching it in those communities?
Definitely, because like you rightly said, Boko Haram means discouraging children to go to school. Going to school is haram, that's what they were saying. But like I said, through the Ministry of Education, UNICEF has supported the government to make sure, first in terms of raising awareness, in terms of engaging communities at different levels.
My apologies, Mr. Sese. My apologies. You get to that example. The reason I asked that question is, we know what UNICEF is doing, but at the end of the day, UNICEF cannot really do anything on its own. There has to be that collaboration, there has to be that partnership, there has to be something done and seem to be done, and not just an aspiration of that. That's the basis of the question. Would you say indeed that we have a concerted direction as a country and as states at the individual levels to ensure that we reverse the trend that started this Boko Haram thing?
Yes, definitely. Like I said, I think the government is making efforts at different levels, national and state level, in terms of making sure that this whole thing about Boko Haram preaching out saying school is haram for children is debunked. And like I said, at different levels, engagements are happening at different levels through the government. And these are different ministries working on this work stream. I tell you, we have the Ministry of Local Government, they have the Ministry of Women's Affairs, we have the Ministry of Information. All of them have different engagements in terms of what they do to debunk this whole philosophy of Boko Haram that children should not go to school. So as I was saying, I will give you an example. In the camps that we have, these children that are released, a lot are not going to school, a lot have never been to school. But once they are in the centers, there is what we call literacy and numeracy classes for them. And I tell you, after 6 months in the camp there, you see them reading and writing, and now they will tell you, no more Boko Haram talking about that going to school is haram, but that education is beneficial to them. And you see the effort these children are making to even write their names. They spend time in the center, when the classes are off, on their own, using the books and slates to just spell their names. And you could tell that a lot has been done for us to get to that level. So the government has done a lot. Like I said, the different ministries are really, really working towards this. And UNICEF is supporting this effort.
Okay, great one there. But how about the communities? Because at the end of the day, there are some of them who are still looking around for some of their relatives, their friends, their colleagues, the members of their community, almost 100, as you already mentioned to us. How are they receiving that new philosophy, that re-engineering of fostering education, with the memory in their minds that there are still about 100, almost 100 of them still in captivity?
Yes, you are right. It is about continuous engagement, because at the end of the day, you can do work in the centers, but if you don't do them at community level, then there is a challenge. It is still a situation that people don't want to recall. But like I said, the continuous community engagement at different levels, using the community stakeholders, using community leaders, using even the religious leaders, youth groups and others, and providing tangible support in those communities in terms of be it formal or non-formal education effort that the government is doing. Yes, there is confidence coming back into those communities. It is a challenge, like you said. This war is protracted and it has destroyed a lot of infrastructure. But the effort that is being put in terms of bringing communities back together, I think they are getting into it and they are getting to believe that yes, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Mr. Sise, how is your engagement with the parents of these children? Because after all said and done, no matter how much a child wants to go to school, if the parents say he or she is not going, full stop, that's it. Many of them were certainly traumatized when Chibok happened. So they would have been a bit circumspect about allowing especially their daughters out of their sight. So obviously you need to engage with them, multiple times to convince them that it's actually safe to allow these girls to go to school. How is that going, that engagement with the parents?
Yeah, so like I said, it is continuous. It is not straightforward. Like you said, parents have this bitter experience. Some of them are still waiting to have back their children. The communities are watching. But then, like I said, belief starts to come back into those communities. Because the engagement, like I said, we start at grassroots level. We have what we call the community networks. Community networks on a daily basis, they are present in those communities, working with those parents. We call what we call case management. You target these parents, try to provide support for them in terms of psychosocial support, in terms of also engaging them in livelihood support, maybe in groups, and then for them to see also the positive part of life. Like those children that are coming back, we also use them as an example to give them hope. That, yes, your child is still away, but we will not stop, we will not relent until the last child is brought back home. And they see these tangible examples, and gradually they are starting to believe, and that's where we are heading.
Mr. Sise, now let's talk about your engagement with the communities, because there's no way that anybody can believe that 276 children were taken away and nobody saw anything, nobody heard. And you don't put children in your pocket. They were transported some one way or another. Some people saw, but have not spoken. So obviously, you are also engaging with the communities. See something, say something, and stuff like that. How is that going?
Yeah, so like I said, you are very right. Number of children, over 200, were abducted in one go. But I just want to also raise your attention, draw attention to this issue of recruitment and use of children and abduction. Hundreds more are being abducted. Because, like I said, that's the tactics of the armed group. They come, they recruit children because they are easy to manipulate, they are easy to manage, and they use them for different purposes. So we have thousands that are there. In the past 6 years that UNICEF started the reintegration program here, we have reunified over 4,000 children back with their families. And these were released by armed groups. So the 200 plus Chibok children, we drew our international attention, which was good, but then we have a lot of other children that are recruited and used, held there behind rebel lines. So that's the thing. We are continuing to make this effort to negotiate and to make sure that also support the government, support the ministries, to trace these families of the children once they are released to us and then sent back home. Because, when the mother, the father loses a child, you know what it means as a parent. Until you have that child back, you will not rest. And that is how, so it is based on that motivates us to do this work.
Well, Mr. Sise, I know I'm going to ask you a really rather difficult question, but it needs to be asked. What we have witnessed over the years, the past few years, as this Fourth Republic grows older, is a gradually decreasing trust quotient for anything government. once it ends with government, federal government, state government, local government, people are generally apprehensive. So I'm wondering how we are able to not just persuade, but sustain the trust of Nigerians who have seen this vulnerability of government and have been enslaved by it, if I can use that term, because you just said now, losing a child. I mean, there is a proverb in Western Nigeria, Southwestern Nigeria, that it's better to say the child is dead rather than say the child is lost. That it's unimaginable, just as you said now. So how do we get people in these communities, both the ones that have suffered and the ones that, God forbid, may be vulnerable as well, to trust whatever comes from government?
Yes. Note that armed insurrection is not just peculiar to Nigeria. It is global in different countries, you know, and of course the responsibility to secure the population of a country rests in the hands of the government. So whatever it is, the government has that responsibility. So that's why UNICEF support the efforts of this government. Like I said, of course, there may be gaps in terms of the response, but when UNICEF works with government, we look at also building those institutions, those capacities in terms of accountabilities, in terms of report, in terms of response. So a lot goes into it, because like we work, in child protection, we work with the social workers. So our role there is to build a professional child protection workforce, social workforce, that can do case management, that can provide quality services to children, that can do follow-up on their own. And then, of course, the NGOs, the CBOs, they are there also to provide support, but the government takes the lead, and that's what we do. So when we provide response, this is the message that we pass on, and when we also engage with the government, this is the message that we also propagate and try to also support them along that line. And, you know, it's not easy. We've come a long way, but we are getting there.
Thank you for that. But how about the children themselves? One of the things that one would expect, I mean, you've said that their enthusiasm is communicable. They want to go to school. They are very excited about it. But then it will be difficult, if not impossible, to take away, to erase from their minds the possibility that anything untoward could happen to them. Is there any way of preparing the children themselves to defend themselves? Do you see that happening? I know, I mean, you're likely to talk about, armed resistance and all of those things, but for children, is there any way of protecting themselves, of defending themselves? God forbid that such a thing would happen again.
So like I was saying, you know, when armed groups come to attack, they attack a community. And in these communities have children and adults. Usually the care of the child is under the parent, the adults, you know. The Safe School Declaration, like I said, part of the effort is to support teachers, you know, help to provide this kind of protection for children once they are under their custody in schools, because attacks happen often when children congregate in schools. That's what we have noticed, or in the playground. So that's why you always work with those community networks. We have what we call community networks that support children wherever they go, whether it's for play, whether it's for skills training, whether it's for education, because like you cannot leave the child alone by themselves, you know, without the protection of an adult. So that's the mechanism we use. Work with the community to protect their children. That's the best way, you know. Community support. So that's why we work with those grassroots groups, those grassroots institutions, youth groups, mothers groups, you know, that can come together and provide what kind of support for children. Tangible, not just security, but tangible support to help promote children go to school. Buy uniforms for them, pay school fees, and monitor their progress in school.
Well, on this issue, we've been speaking largely about children in school. Can we, expand this conversation a little to children wherever they are? In school, out of school, at home, and all of those things. There's that famous Child Rights Act, that some states we understand are yet to actually domesticate. How significant do you think that is, and how much do you think it will help to protect the rights of children?
Great. I think that is, since I'm here for the past 2.5 years, it is one of the breakthroughs that I've seen, how a lot, except few, that have not domesticated the child rights law. I mean, in the Bay States, we have already done that. And this is an instrument, a legal instrument, that will hold duty bearers to account. That we hold duty bearers to account. So it is like a legal document. It's the Bible when you talk about, when it comes to child rights, what we do for children. These are non-negotiable issues that are in there. The government, it's a must for the government to do this. We know it is a challenge depending on the situation of the government, depends on the country, but it is now the implementation. Domestication gone, okay, they have signed it, everybody has signed it. Is that all? No. The implementation. So now what UNICEF is doing now with the government is the dissemination. Doing this document into different local languages and disseminating it at different levels. For the children, parents, caregivers, the government, institutions, there are different responsibilities for different categories of people, and we are working with this. There's a committee for the Bay States, to make sure that this domestication, is not just about a document, we have this, no. Let us go into the implementation. So first is dissemination and then implementation along with monitoring.
It's heartwarming that you mention implementation of that law, because what readily comes to mind, having been active for whatever number of years now, this Child Rights Act, it was not a very pleasant thing to hear last year and even the year before of the level of multidimensional poverty that children in Nigeria are subjected to. I'm sure it's something that concerns you as well. What are the things that you think need to be done? First of all, let's understand, because at the end of the day, if the children are poor now, they're only going to grow up poor all the while. So I'm wondering what you think is the missing link that has brought us to the point where we're having such a huge, more than 50% of children in Nigeria are said to be in multidimensional poverty. Of course, you also cited that. That reflects on their parents as well. How do we reverse those figures progressively and futuristically?
Yeah. It is about, providing education for children. Making sure that all children, I will underline the word, all children in Nigeria should be a must. They have to go to school. That is where you have to start. That's the basis. Have these children educated, even up to tertiary level. They are being supported. And I tell you, by the time we get to that level, the issue of this whole thing about poverty, until we do that, because if you go out, you see a lot of children roaming the streets, not having that support, not having that access when it comes to school. You have the others that have that opportunity to go to school. You look at that set, so it is still an issue that has to be tackled. So that's why I'm saying all children, it is a must that all children have to go to school. So now with this child right law, which is like, it makes it obligatory for a child to go to school, I think that's the way forward, to address this long-term issue of poverty and other challenges that comes with that.
But there are some things that will not be, my apologies, Alera. There are some things that will not be taught in school. Certain morals will not be taught in school. Personal discipline will not be taught in school. Character may not be taught in school. Some things are modeled by people. So in a situation where we have parents that are damaged, what can the children learn from them? So it goes back to the question again, how do we reverse this trend, given the realities that even the parents themselves have to contend with?
Yeah, you are right. So when UNICEF works with the government, we don't just focus on the children. We also focus on the parents or caregivers. So we have what we call the parenting programs, the life skills and other things. We have parents, like we are talking about character, which is very important, the upbringing of a child. When we do parenting programs, parents, be they fathers or mothers, uncle, whatever, women, they are brought into these sessions, and then you hold discussions, you hold dialogues in terms of how you bring up children. Communities, they have their way of bringing up children even before our own time, and this was considered as community care for children. One child was not owned by a parent. The community, the child in that community, the community owned that child. All of them provide support to the upbringing of that child. So a child going astray, it is the responsibility of the community. So like I said, it's at different level. The community engagement at the grassroots is very, very important. Once you look at top level, you talk about laws, policies, like now we have the child rights law and the other things, but then also look at the grassroots level. If you mix both and they tend to work well, then we're heading for the right direction.
When you were talking about all the children must go to school, it just crossed my mind that, yeah, there is a law in this country that says that all children of school age must go to school. It's just that some parents decide not to send their children to school, and sometimes they get away with it. I know that at some point, Lagos State was trying to enforce it by picking up children from the streets and all that. But we don't have any details as to how successful that was and how they were able to get those children all back to school. You see them all hawking stuff at street junctions instead of going to school. And that, of course, sometimes is as a result of poverty because those children are the breadwinners. Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning, Mr. Samuel Cisse, UNICEF Child Protection Manager and Officer in Charge, UNICEF Maiduguri. Thank you very much for coming to look at the issue of the abduction of children in Nigeria with specific reference to 9 years since the Chibok girls were abducted. Thank you, and we wish you all the best in the work you do, and we appreciate the work that you do in that part of our country. Thank you very much. Sunrise will be back.
Thank you, too. Thanks for having me.
Sunrise will be right back, and this time we're going to be looking at our lifestyle segment. You know that talk about technology and finding the balance? You know, this technology thing, to some of us analog people, it can be quite challenging, but we'll pay attention. So see you in just a moment while we go to school and learn more about technology.